Good afternoon, back again. I say afternoon, I actually think it's the evening. In this video, I thought it'd be worthwhile going over 5 things we think are important if you're trying to start a small holding in the UK. 5 things that we think would be beneficial for you to consider before you get started. These are 5 things that we have found either difficult, problematic, damn near impossible to resolve since we've been here on our small plot, and they're a very important part of what you will need to do. So let's get cracking. Okay, number 1, water. Never ever underestimate how much water you are going to need to grow your veg. The chances are you are going to go through a ton of water just to keep it alive. If you've had a summer like we have, we've had I think nearly 6 weeks of sun now, shouldn't complain, but it is killing everything off. It is that dry at the moment, even the grass is dying off. Water is essential. Now if you are on mains, which we are, then on a small garden you're probably okay. You probably won't rack up a massive bill because of the amount of water that you are using. Where we are, our mains is on a meter. It's on a digital meter and it's recording and sending out updates every 30 minutes. Not something that we like the idea of, and something that we try to avoid overusing. That being the case, we have multiple of these. So we've got 4 of these IBC totes, and what, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, maybe a bit more, they were pretty full. All 4 of these were full 2 months ago, and in that time, just through the amount that we've used to keep the veg alive, they are pretty much drained. We've got one now that is just coming up to half full, one that's just coming up to half full now, and we've not had any rain to replenish these. The one that you can just see here, this is completely empty. It's looking a bit sludgy at the moment. That's how we got it. Unfortunately, I have cleaned it out, won't make a difference. But we've got these 2 here, which basically feed this part of the veg garden, and this is our potatoes, leeks, we've got squash, and we've got 3 beds of leeks up here. We've got 4 beds of potatoes, squash and corn a bit further up. This has basically been supplying those with water, and we've now had to utilise this for in the polytunnel as well. We have a further two IBC totes round at the polytunnel, but as you can imagine, the polytunnel gets very, very hot, and the veg we've got growing in there dies off rather quickly if not watered. Hopefully there you can see where the water line is. There's probably about 6 to 8 inches left of water in the base of each. The problem that we've got with that is we get a lot of dust blown in. We're right next to a farm, and he's been ploughing that up repeatedly over the course of the last few weeks after taking up a crop a bit earlier than that. We get a lot of dust blown in, and that ends up getting through into the IBC totes, so we end up with a lot of silt down in the bottom. So we're trying not to use too much of this at the moment, but that won't last as long anyway. But water is essential. If you can get a couple of water butts, even if they're as small as this one, it doesn't make any difference. I would say always try and get something that keeps you a little bit off the grid, just because it gives you a bit more independence. You can hook that up to a garage drain system, and you'll at least get some water from that. But yeah, water, very essential. You really need to consider where you're going to get it from, how long it will last, what you're going to use it for, and where you're going to place it. That's the other thing. If your veg garden, your kitchen garden, whatever you want to call it, is spread out, or it's rather large, or it's far from your house, which ours is, you're going to be carrying a lot of watering cans or buckets backwards and forwards, and it will get tiring, and it is time consuming. That is something that we have definitely found. We can spend a couple of hours on an evening just watering the beds, and it takes forever. So water, number one. Number two is soil. You really need to take into consideration what your soil is like as you buy or move into your property. Now, we didn't really consider it a great deal in this where we are now. Our previous two properties, the last one was very gravelly, and I'm talking rather large pebbles and stuff in the soil. It was an absolute nightmare to dig into, just because it was so hard to get through. But the quality of the soil, it was okay. The one before that was heavy clay, and it was an absolute nightmare to grow anything in because it got waterlogged. Now we have gone to the complete opposite of that, and we are now in sand. And when I say sand, I mean sand. So that there was soil that we dug out of the old greenhouse that was here. So the foundations for the greenhouse were here. You can still see them on the floor. We dug out this entire area plus some of the space to the side, and we reused that soil inside the polytunnel. So we've built up the beds using some of that excavated soil, and then in our actual veg beds we've put in some of our own compost, plus I don't know how many bags, 20 bags of bought compost, to try and bulk up and add organic matter to our soil. But our original soil is so sandy. Once it's had a couple of days of dry weather, let's be fair, I'll give it 2 weeks of dry weather, all of the organic matter seems to have just disappeared, and it is back to sand. Now if we dig down where I'm stood now, if we dug down about 4 foot, we would be straight into like golden sand. It is just complete sand down below, and the actual topsoil is very sandy as well. So like this bit here, that's a good example of what our soil turns like if we are adding organic matter to it at a regular rate. Now this stuff, you can see how dry this is, and that has been watered twice a day for I don't know, quite a few weeks now, and it's still bone dry. So you really need to take into consideration what your soils are going to be like. That will give you an idea of what you can grow, where you can grow it, what sort of water consumption, back to point one, you will need, and also what organic matter you need adding to it, whether that's horse manure, compost, anything that you can think of. Wood chip. Wood chip's a good one. Wood chip's something that we're actually thinking about putting down in here. So these beds, these look quite dry at the moment. They were watered this morning, they're ready for a water this evening. But yeah, soil, you really need to look into that, and that will give you a good idea of what your commitments will be. The other thing with that is checking the pH, and also checking what nutrients are in it, what minerals, whether it's deficient in anything. We assume, we haven't tested, and this is one of the things that we are going to do next year, or early next year, is we're going to do some soil samples from various locations around our garden, and we're going to get an idea of what we might be deficient in to help us grow into the following year. This year we just felt like we've been playing catch up in terms of actually getting things to establish. We had a very long wet winter and things just did not want to grow. That has not helped us at all, and then we've gone straight from a wet winter into a baking summer, so it's just mental. On to number 3. And number 3 is compost, or in this case black gold. We cannot get enough compost, similar to the water situation. Adding compost to our soil, which we've just mentioned, is completely impoverished. The amount of compost that we need is ridiculous. We have emptied out 8 bays this year that we've filled up over the last year and a half of our own compost, very good quality compost, full of organic matter, and it's barely even touched what we needed for these things. This is going to be an ongoing running project for us, just to keep on top of soil improvements, and compost is key to getting this sort of thing going. Even if you had clay soil, you're going to have the same sort of issues, but with our sandy soil there's no structure to it whatsoever apart from the compost that we put into it. Now, one thing that we will be adding later this year is some horse manure, or manure in general, just to try and add some more structure to the soil. But compost is essential, so you really need to think, are you going to buy it in? Can you buy it in bulk? Are you going to make it yourself? And how are you going to do that? Obviously there's implications for each. If you are buying it in, if you're buying it in individual bags, that works well for a small garden. When you get to a larger scale, when you're looking at something along those lines, size-wise, buying bags, individual bags, is unlikely to be economical. It's going to cost you a fortune. The best thing that we could do in our circumstance is buy bulk bags. Now, we live off a private lane and access to it is very restricted in terms of vehicle movements. That being the case, we have found it very difficult to find people who can deliver bulk bags of compost to us. That obviously has a knock-on effect that we can't get compost bought in. We've had to make it ourselves. Not a problem, we've had plenty of stuff to make compost from, but we could have done with about 3 years worth of compost just this year alone, based on the volume that we had. And currently, like I say, it's very, very dry. We aren't having to cut the grass or trim anything out because nothing's growing at the moment. Everything is pretty much in stasis. It's not growing. It's either dead or it's just not growing at all. So we aren't currently building up our compost stores. We've got 5 bays partially full over here. These were all emptied out earlier this year, and we've pretty much stopped at that because we haven't got anything else to add to it. Now obviously we will get a lot of organic matter from the stuff once it dies back, the plants that we've got in the garden, but at this point in time, which is August, we've got nothing else going into those beds, so it'll be interesting to see how much we get going forwards into autumn, and whether we can make up enough for next year. But yes, compost, one of our 5 essentials for the garden. You will need it. It is important. Don't underestimate how much. Number 4 is time. Never underestimate how much time things will take to do, because I can guarantee you it will take a lot longer than you imagine. It is currently 7 o'clock in the morning, and I've just come out to sort the chickies out and water the polytunnel before it gets too hot. it looks like it's going to be another warm day. You can see how bright it is. The lay team are already out. I've got to go and let the big chickies, Rufus and the ladies, out there, and the new chicks have also got to be let out. That's the easy thing to do. Watering the polytunnel, that's going to take me quite a bit of time to get that done, and possibly some of the other beds this morning as well, just because everything's drying out. Now, like I say, 7 o'clock in the morning, midsummer, that was probably about 6 o'clock I was coming down to do that, because things were getting too hot. So the polytunnel heats up really quick once the sun's on it, so if I weren't doing that at 6 o'clock in the morning, by the time we came down, things were getting crispy. The chicks and the chickies, they've not been too bad. The position of their coops is normally in shade first thing in the morning, so we've got a bit of time. We don't need to rush down to do that as quickly as you would expect, but it all takes time. And if you've got a large piece of land and you are trying to grow veg or have livestock and fit work around that, which a lot of people will be doing in the UK, it's going to take up so much of your time. It is unreal. You will be spending so much time just opening things up, making sure things are still alive, making sure they've got enough water, making sure they've got enough compost, planting, growing, repotting, harvesting. It takes up so much time, and that's something that me and Sarah have really struggled with this year. We've got a 4-year-old boy plus 4 dogs plus the chickies. Thankfully we've not got any other livestock at this point in time, although we would quite like some sheep or some goats. But in reality, every single one of those things, as well as the garden, the plants, the veg, it all takes up time, your time, and quite often that fits around work and earning, making a living. I have no idea how many farmers and stuff do it, because there just isn't enough time in the day for what we need to get done. Anyway, let's go and water the polytunnel. Number 5 is practicality. Seems a bit of an odd one, but I'll explain. Butterflies, how annoying. Look at that. That bed was completely full of black kale up until a week ago, and I took them all out because, as you've seen, we ended up with cabbage white getting in here and making a right mess of the kale. We have got some more planted outside, but we'll just have to see how that does. So with regards to setting up a homestead, 2 things you need to consider. Will I use it? Can I store it? They are 2 of the main things that you need to think about, and certainly they have a good place on our list. Will I use it? Livestock, that's a relatively simple thing. If you've got to the point of having livestock, even if that's chickens or sheep or goats or whatever else, the chances are you're going to use those products, unless of course you're just having them for pets. That's a whole different ball game. But if you've got things, let's say chickens, chances are you're going to use the eggs. You may be using the meat birds as well. That's a nice simple thing to do. The eggs store quite well, and the chicken you'll probably use pretty fast anyway, unless you're storing in a freezer or something. The only issue there is volume. Will you get through it fast enough? If you've got a load of broilers, let's say for chickens, you need to think what you're going to do with them. So that's relatively simple for livestock. When it comes to veg, that's a whole different ball game. And what we've found is that we tend to splurge grow. And by that I mean, rather than concentrating on just what we eat, we have planted a variety of different fruits and veg with the expectation that we might like it down the line, or that we just want to give it a go. And quite often we either end up with beds full of things that we are not going to eat. We've decided we don't like them, or they've just not done as well as we thought they would do. Basically, yeah, or they're taking up space that could be used for things that we do actually eat. So some of the things that we've concentrated on this year: squash, we eat a lot of squash. Courgettes, we eat a lot of courgettes. Tomatoes, that's a given. We've got a polytunnel, it makes sense to grow tomatoes, and Sarah makes some fantastic preserves and ketchups and whatever else with what we grow out of here. Bell peppers, we eat a fair number of bell peppers, although Alexander is not that keen. Cabbage we use for pickling and for what's it called, sauerkraut, as well as just putting in normal dinners and stews and whatever else. So cabbage is a good one. Things that we have had difficulty with: onions. We never seem to do very well with onions, however we do extremely well with leeks. So this year we've switched it around, and rather than growing a load of onions that aren't going to do well and won't get good size, we've gone for leeks, which we will have a good supply of them over winter this year. That should be fantastic. Potatoes, we definitely eat potatoes, and we've got 4 beds of potatoes, 2 of which are ready for lifting now. So we've refined what we grow. We still have a tendency though to plant things that probably we will not use. So we have watermelon growing in the polytunnel, and that is not doing well at all. It's the first time we've grown it. It's something we've learnt we will not be doing it next time. We've got courgettes in the polytunnel. They have not done well this year. They've really struggled to take off at all, and the ones outside are doing far better. Same with corn. Last year we grew some corn in the polytunnel. It didn't do too bad. This year we've planted it and it has not done well at all. The stuff that we've got growing outside, even with the dry conditions, has done far better than what we've got growing in here. So we're refining as we go along what we can grow and what we will use. So that's the growing aspect, or that's the using aspect. The other one is the preserving. So that is a tricky one, and that is something that we have really struggled with. Last year we had quite a lot of garlic and quite a lot of onions. Not as many as we would have liked, but we had enough, probably enough to last us the winter. But where we stored them, and it's not like we're limited on space, but where we did store them was in the barn, which is dry and cold and dark, right? So effectively a big root cellar. But over winter, when it was really wet, and last year was particularly wet, we noticed that there was a lot of condensation building up in the barn, and that basically sent everything soft or mouldy in no time at all. Even the garlic went soft. So in terms of storage, you really need to take that into consideration. Where are you going to store things? Because you've only got so much room in the house, or in your cupboards, or in your fridge, or in your freezer. And unless you've got a root cellar, like a lot of Americans seem to have in their homesteads, you're going to struggle with where to store things. This is one of the other reasons why we switched this year to leeks rather than onions. So rather than lifting the onions tail end of autumn and storing them, drying them off and storing them in the barn or storing them in the house, which we haven't got room for, we've gone for leeks, which achieve the same thing as an onion culinary wise, but we can leave in the ground all winter without too much worry, and we can lift them as and when we need them. So that's how we've adapted. But things like squash and courgettes we tend to section up and then freeze, and then we will use them in stews all through the winter. We've still got some from last year. We'll probably do the same with squash this year, because last year they went soft again. Now we kept them in the house, and we've done that most years, but last year I don't know why, I don't know whether it was because it was so wet, but they did go soft. So your storage has a massive impact on what you can, will and need to grow, because there's no point growing stuff all through the year to get a glut at the end of the year or late summer, early autumn, and then find that you've got nowhere to put all of this stuff. You've got no neighbours to give it to, or you're not selling it, or you need to take that into consideration, because it will be a big commitment, and it's a lot of wasted time, effort, money, water, compost, all that sort of stuff to grow all of these various things that you may never ever get to use. So that's something to consider. I honestly can't believe it. I planted some new turnips and some black kale and some kohlrabi in one of those beds over there, and that were only 2 days ago, and a mole's already been in it. Honestly, these things have got it in for me and anything I plant. Anyway, regardless of the mole, those are our 5 things that we think you should consider before or as you are setting up a homestead or a small holding in the UK. They are worthwhile things to really take on board, because they will impact how you grow and how you develop your plot of land, your small holding, whatever it is. So I hope you found that interesting, and we will do some follow-ups soon. But for now, I'm going to go and water the polytunnel because it really needs it. Hopefully we'll get some rain for the rest of the garden, because I don't fancy doing that. But I'll see you next time.